Welcome to Pure Mind Magic, the show to evolve your mind. Our mind is the most powerful thing we have, but no one teaches us how to use it. When we find out how, we're ready to create magic in life and in business. Learn real mindset secrets from brilliant minds around the world to change your mindset and income level forever. With every decision you make, you create your future. What is your next move? Now, welcome your host, international magician, speaker, and podcast performance consultant, Jennifer S. Royal.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Pure Mind Magic podcast. If you're new to the show, please make sure to subscribe, so with that you won't miss any of the new upcoming episodes. Today is an episode that came about because I was once again in a bookstore, and for everyone who's familiar with the show knows that I just love books and hanging around in bookstores and just finding books or letting books find me at the right time. And this was a book that captured my attention right away because it was black with all this gold on it, and it just looked stunning. So I was curious, and this book was all about the Bullet Journal Methode. And today on the show is the genius behind it, Ryder Carroll. And I immediately started reading it, and it's all about getting more organized. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with the method already. So this helps you to structure your day, your life, just everything in a better way. So there's a whole system behind it, and we will touch on that in this episode. But Ryder says that you really have to learn that for yourself from the book, and he also has done some videos where you can learn it. So his background is he is a digital product designer, and I think he's really all about this design thinking, and it's amazing what he comes up. So a very intelligent man. He has a background in software, and he also believes in the power of the notebook and writing things down from hand. So we will talk about in this episode why this is so important. And when you're curious now, just head on to the website. I will leave the link in the show notes, and you can grab your copy of the Bullet Journal Methode from Ryder Carroll. And before we dive into this very interesting interview, I have a short tip for you now about kind of entertainment. And you also know that I'm really into podcasting, and I listen to podcasts all the time when I'm out shopping, when I'm driving. I have always a new show, or I'm looking for a new show, and I found one that just launched a few days ago that is called What's Wrong with Us? So the background here is it's about random conversations, and I sometimes like this thing of this little chaos, so interesting for this episode. But from my artist background, there's always this chaotic thing before there is order and things fall into place. And also, of course, when you have your bullet journal, you are structuring yourself. So I think maybe this goes hand in hand. And What's Wrong with Us is from T-Rex Productions. Definitely listen into that. They already have a couple of episodes launched. I found it on Spotify, so you can listen to this wherever you are listening to your favorite podcast. So with that said, you have some great tips from my side to be entertained and also to get organized. So get ready, lean back, and enjoy some new inspiration to take your life to the next level. Here he is for you. Born in Vienna, now living in New York, Ryder Carroll. Hi Ryder, welcome to Pure Mind Magic.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And I had the great pleasure, and it said there is no accident in life. And I are a firm believer that there is a time for every book in your life to find you. And just a week ago, I stepped into a bookstore, what I love to do everywhere in the world. And I was attracted to one book that looked kind of magical to me because it is black and then there's all this gold and there's a big circle in the middle and it says Bullet Journal, the method. So this is a German version, obviously. And I had to have this book. I don't know why. And then I immediately started working with it. And I felt a strong desire to reach out to you. And I'm very happy that you took the invitation to come on the show today and share with more people around the world your message around this system. But before we reveal all the secrets, what the Bullet Journal is or things it could do for you, Ryder, can you give us a short overview of your background? What are you doing?
Certainly. So for the last 12 years, I've been a digital product designer, which means that I designed interfaces and different flows for everything ranging from watch faces to insurance apps. Essentially, if it had a screen, I would try to devise different design systems for that platform. And before that, I was a student and I studied English and art. And before that, I was born and raised in Vienna, Austria. So I left Austria when I was 18 to go study. So that was a backwards rendition of my history.
Nice. So you have a European background then, obviously. And it's really interesting that you are kind of an expert in the digital world and help to create digital products and apps. And now you came up with something completely different, like the Bullet Journal, that has to do with really handwriting. And maybe we start with this. Can you give us the insights why there is a big difference in writing really with the hand compared to typing digitally?
Well, I think the most obvious difference is that when you write by hand, you're also going offline. And in my own life, I found that I was and am very distractible. So anytime there was something that could be distracting, it was distracting. I'd be spending a lot of my time doing everything but what I was supposed to be doing. And what I found over time, especially living in the digital space so deeply and developing products for that space, is that when I would sit down with my notebook, all of a sudden those distractions would just stop, right? The phone would be away. I wouldn't be looking at a screen. And I found that I could be a lot more focused and productive. Another thing about writing by hand, as the study suggests, is that it allows us to tap into our thoughts in a different way. We're connecting both with our mind and our body simultaneously because it's a very kinesthetic act, right? It also takes a little bit longer. I'm not here to suggest that writing by hand is faster than typing, but I think that it's more effective in some contexts. And one of those contexts is when you're thinking, because it takes longer, because there's a little bit more friction. It requires you to focus. It requires you to have a better economy with your language. You want to focus on what is most important. And you have to think, right? When you're typing, you can hear something and just mimic the source all the time. But when you're writing, you don't have time to copy everything. So what you want to do is you go from listening to actually hearing what's being said. You have to use your own mind to transform that information into something and reduce it. And writing by hand helps me do that. My notes are very short, but I'll pinpoint a lot of different points of information rather than just trying to replicate the source, which for me as a student never really worked that well. I spent all my time freaking out about capturing all the information and then I didn't hear anything that was being said. So writing can help me hear both to what's being said, but also to my own mind. And so that's really helpful. Writing by hand also helps us remember things longer. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we're actually thinking about the information and digesting it.
Makes so much sense. And it's really, you mentioned it, like we magicians are masters of distraction because it's all about distracting people in a magic show from what is really going on to come up with an illusion. And I think it's really true. So when we sit in front of our smartphone or computer, it's really easy that another app pops up or a new message or whatever. And it takes some time for our brain to refocus on the task we are accomplishing at that moment. And I think this is a big advantage when you have pen and paper, because it's just you, the pen and paper to start out. And for a long time, this concept of journaling is around. And I know a lot of really successful people are doing that to get their mind clear and to focus and find out on what they really want. But Ryder, what would you say you can describe it best without revealing everything that the bullet journal is? But where is the extra feature that you get with working with the bullet journal instead of just journaling?
Well, I like to describe the bullet journal method as a mindfulness practice that's disguised as a productivity system. On the one hand, the bullet journal provides different techniques to help you declutter your mind on an ongoing basis very quickly, so we can be more productive and make better use of our time and our energy. But I think that productivity in itself is not necessarily the full answer. We live in a time where we nearly worship productivity, right? When we're not doing something, then we're being lazy. Like that's kind of where the narrative has gone so far. We need to keep going and going and going and going. But in my own experience and what I've seen throughout my community is that you can be very productively working towards completely empty goals, right? Every day you get up and you do exactly what you're supposed to do. You have a plan, you do all these things, and you spend days, months, years working towards something just to realize that it is meaningless to you. And that's because that goal was something that you may have inherited from your culture maybe, or from the media or something. And you never stop to think whether or not it actually meant anything to you. So how do we help with this? How do we avoid this situation? And for me, a lot of that comes from mindfulness. And mindfulness to me means taking a step back from your life and checking in with yourself and trying to become more present in the moment right now, and just to see what is happening to you in many ways. So in meditation, a lot of times, essentially the idea is not to do anything, for your mind not to be grasping. And for me, mindfulness in a journal is just to try to get an objective snapshot of what's happening in your life. Because through bullet journaling, you're writing down your thoughts all day long as short form bulleted sentences. That's one important part of the system. But our lists can be never ending, right? So a lot of what bullet journaling is about is coming back and curating our lists, asking ourselves, does this matter? Is it vital? What would happen if I never did these things? What do I want more of? What do I want less of? And this can happen very quickly when you get into this habit. So essentially what you're doing is you're not trying to do as much as possible. You're actually trying to do as few things as possible, but spending as much time as possible with those things. And in that process, you start to get insight about yourself, about the things that you care about, the things that you're really curious about, the things that you're not curious about, the things that don't matter to you. And with that insight, you can then start setting plans that are meaningful, right? Like when you learn about, I want to have more of this in my life, then all of a sudden you can go back to the system in the bullet journal and start planning that out. You can take an insight and put it into action. And that's really what bullet journaling is about. It's about aligning your actions with your beliefs so you can live a much more intentional life.
That sounds so cool. And I think what you described in the beginning is something like when you're climbing a ladder and you reach the top and find out that it stood on the wrong wall. And I'm pretty
Exactly.
sure that the bullet journal can help you to avoid that, like seeing your progress and seeing where you might made some decisions that worked and also decisions that didn't work. So from reading your book, I found out that the bullet journal is really something for everyone. So it doesn't matter if you are an executive or you are a startup or you are a stay-at-home mom. So you can use it for everything, like to organize your life in a better way. And I think the new year 2019 just started, and this is the time of the year where people like to make all these resolutions and organize their goals, and then a few weeks down the line they just give up on them. Would you say that working with your method of the bullet journal can prevent them from having that happen to them?
I think it gives them a better shot because through this practice, you are defining what is meaningful to you on your own terms. And that's something I feel like we don't do a lot. I think a lot of times we take somebody else's idea and plug it into our own life. For example, run a marathon. Like, that's what I want to do this year. In like 3 months, I want to run a marathon. Okay, why? Why is that important to you? It's like, oh, because then I'll get into shape. Okay, so why isn't the goal to get into shape? How would that look like? You know, running a marathon, at least for people who haven't done it before, I haven't either, but a lot of my friends have, like, being in marathon shape 24/7 for an entire year is incredibly difficult and not necessarily healthy, especially for those who are going from zero to marathon, right? But getting into shape has many different approaches, many different options, and trying to really understand what you want and why can have immense benefits because you're setting yourself up for success because you're trying to connect with your actual motivation. Let's take another example. Make $1 million. It's not necessarily this year's goal, but a life goal. Like, I think that that's not a helpful goal because it doesn't mean anything to you, right? On the other hand, I would like to buy a house for my parents to retire in. I'd like to pay off my student loans. I would like to have my own apartment. Those are goals based off your lived experience. These are things you can actually connect with. The price tag might be the same, but at least those goals keep you motivated because they mean something to you every day. And I think it's really important to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And that's a very big part of the bullet journal. And the bullet journal, as you said, really encourages self-learning through your individual experience, right? I like to see the bullet journal as like this empty house that I give people, and they fill it with their own life. So every bullet journal turns into a very different story depending on the user. And I think that's really important. So everybody has to take the responsibility of defining their goals and making them very personal. I think the more personal they become, the more motivation you'll have. Because as you move closer to this goal that you may have absorbed from somebody else, the more you realize it doesn't really mean anything to you. You don't have any connection to it. And of course, you're not going to be motivated to do somebody else's goal. But as soon as you understand what you need, or understand it better at least, that can keep you motivated. And the bullet journal also helps you break it down. So if you have a really big goal, you can take this and disassemble it and work on much smaller actionable steps on a consistent basis. Bullet journaling is very much about taking baby steps, but consistently taking baby steps. What small thing can I do right now that will take me forward? And that can be very helpful because our goals can also be very overwhelming. So I'm a big advocate for breaking things down into the smallest possible steps.
Makes so much sense. And I think this also brings in a lot of motivation. So when you keep track of everything, and as you said, like, you see that you accomplish some smaller steps towards your big goal. And also what you said, I think, is so important to bring in this emotion to really connect with the goal and the things you would like to have, to desire. So not just having numbers on a paper that doesn't mean anything, but bringing in this emotion, this life, these pictures you would like to have and how you would like your life to turn out. And on the back of your book, also in this circle with some golden lines around it, it says that it's kind of leaving the passenger status in your life and really becoming the pilot of your own life. So for me, that implies like taking over control over thoughts, over action, over decisions. So what would you say, how can the bullet journal help to become the pilot?
I think the first part is that we're just becoming more aware of what we're doing. And we live in the age where we're said that we have unlimited access to information. I think that it's the other way around. I think that information has unlimited access to us at this point, right? Through the rise of cell phones and technology, we can be distracted from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. And I think it's really important for us to get in the habit of taking a step back just for a little bit. You know, I'm not talking about like not using technology. There's nothing wrong with technology. I think that there's something wrong with our relationship to technology. Technology is infinite. We are not, right? We are very limited. Our time and our energy is very limited. And I feel for us to make the most of our time and energy, we have to become shepherds of it. We have to become aware of what we're doing, what we're working towards. And that's not a one-time thing. I think the problem with a lot of the goals that we set right now is like you kind of ignore all your goals, and then once a year you sit down, you set all these goals, and then you know you feel like you're done. And that's a problem because all goals, any kind of progress takes ongoing work. And through bullet journaling, essentially what you're doing is you're putting in that work a little bit every day. And in this case, it's just checking in with what you're doing. Like our task lists in the bullet journal aren't just like simply a bunch of stuff. The way I like to look at our lists in the bullet journal is that every one of your tasks is an experience that's waiting to be born. So in that way, our task lists are kind of like time machines that give us a glimpse into the future that we're building. So by checking in with those lists every day, you're like, is that a future that I want? What can I change now to try to get closer to the future that I want? What are the distractions that are taking me away from that? And by doing this on a continual basis, and this might sound very existential and complicated, but if you do it every day, it becomes very quick. Like, do I want to be doing this? No. Do I want to be doing that? Yes. You know, you just get used to that practice, and you just continue to curate your time much more effectively. You invest it into the things that matter. You spend more time with the things that you want and less time with the things that you don't. This is not necessarily about spending more time with the things that make you happy. That's a whole different conversation. It's about spending more time with the things that you believe in, and not all the things that we believe in make us happy all the time. Some things are necessary. So through bullet journaling, I think that we can stick to our goals because we're engaging with them on an ongoing basis. You're checking in. Did I actually go to the gym today? Or did I go buy the food that I need for the diet? Or did I take the time that I need to read more, meditate more? Okay, I didn't. What can I do now to get back on track? Is this still relevant to me? If not, why? What is relevant to me? You know, you're just taking that time to think it through. And it's not about overthinking it. It's just about spending a little bit more time than you have before. And I think that little bit of time is incredibly valuable.
Yes, you're so right. It's really about designing what you want in your mind first before going about it and just reacting to everything that is happening on a daily basis. So like having your master plan in your mind. So I'm sure, Ryder, that a lot of people listening are now really curious to find out more about the bullet journal, what exactly it is and how it works with all the secrets inside of it, like the big system behind it. So where can we send them to find out?
You can go to bulletjournal.com where there's a bunch of different free resources available. There's a 4-minute video that will give you a basic overview, and as well as written documentation that should help anybody begin. Again, a lot of these resources are there to set the foundation. Another thing that makes the bullet journal different from other solutions out there is that it's designed for you to build your own system. I provide the foundation, but my life is different from other people's lives. And that's a real cornerstone. Like, one size does not fit all. So the idea of the bullet journal, it's designed to be modular, and you're encouraged to design your own tools that you can plug into this toolkit. And the website will show you how you can begin to do that and what tools you may need.
That is very nice. And I also remember that you wrote in the book that, like, your personal notebook wouldn't help anyone, and also you couldn't do anything with the notebook of another person. So as you said, it's really individual. And obviously, to start with the bullet journal, besides your book with all the information inside, you need a pen and your own notebook. So do you have any tips on good notebooks, or is it also just an individual thing and a matter of taste?
Use the notebook. I guess there are two parts of this. Use a notebook that you're excited about, and use a notebook that will last. One thing that's really beautiful about bullet journaling is that every single notebook becomes another volume in the library of your own life. You have the potential of creating a very rich record of your experience, one that you can revisit later, one that you can learn from. I mean, in my own life, I have gone back to look up solutions that I came up with professionally. It's like, when you design systems, you come up with the same solutions over and over again, and I don't have to start from scratch. So the short answer is use a notebook that's high quality, invest in yourself, and use one that you're excited about. Yes, we do sell our own official bullet journal notebook, but it's really about the tools that inspire people. And the same thing is true for a pen. The pen notebook debate is a very subjective one in many ways, and it depends on papers and inks. I would just say start simple, and start writing, and then figure out what you need, and then buy things. A lot of people won't start because, like, I haven't found the perfect notebook, or I haven't found the perfect pen. And the next thing you know, it's like 3 months later. I would just say the next time you see a notebook or a pen, just start with that. The refining how you bullet journal is something that can happen down the line. Beginning is the most important part.
Very good tips from you here. Also, this practical advice on how to find everything you need. So, Ryder, I'm curious now, because you mentioned that you do this since a couple of years and you sometimes go back and look things up. So, how many journals have you filled already?
Well, I mean, I've been bullet journaling for decades at this point. The bullet journal did not arrive fully formed. It's been a very long, ongoing process, one that's still evolving. I would say the ones that survive, I have about 25 of them.
Great. So this is quite a number you filled there. And from your perspective now, looking back, what would you say is the biggest thing the bullet journal kind of accomplished for you?
It's a difficult question to answer because the bullet journal is designed to evolve with us. So every one of my bullet journals would have a very specific purpose, or that purpose would change halfway through. If I had to generalize, I would say that it's helped me from going into a more reactive person to one that's more responsive, one that I can actually put some distance between themselves and the things that happen to me, and then think about it for a minute. And that space is become very critical and very impactful in my own life, because it gives me an opportunity to check in with myself. Why am I angry about this? Or why is this upsetting? Or how is this a good thing? Or what about the situation can I actually control? It opens up a space where it allows me to actually have more agency over my own actions and change my behavior in a much more effective way. So if I had to generalize it, I would say that's what it's helped me do. And it's also just in general helped me have a much more productive conversation with life, right? When things aren't good, generally speaking, our negativity bias gets very agitated and you start finding the negative all over the place. And no matter how positive you are, people get into a funk. But if you are accurately recording your experience, like, you will see the good in your life. So part of my own bullet journal practice is a gratitude practice. I just write down 2 things I'm grateful for every day. And, no matter how bad things are, if you keep finding those things, there's always evidence that there are positive things. So that's one very specific example of how it can change the way, help you go off autopilot,
Yes, that is so true. And I hear that from a lot of my guests, that it is really about this focusing on things you can be grateful for, even when things get tough. And I think it's a good idea to really put them down, not just think about it, because then you have to write it and you transport it from the invisible world into the visible world, and you kind of affirm it with this process. So I'm sure it's really interesting for everyone listening now to go to your website and either download the book or get it as a hard copy, what I always prefer, because then you can really work with it. And I already made some marks and notes into your book, and it's really beautifully designed and with different font in the book, and it's perfectly described on how you work the system with all the applications. So Ryder, I would love to leave you the last words for this episode. And it was a great honor to have you as a guest on Pure Mind Magic today. And I'm really so happy that you took this spontaneous invitation to come on and sharing some insights of your brilliant mind here with the rest of the world. So any good advice, favorite quote, or other inspiration you have to leave everyone who's listening in a just good, magical, productive mode for today?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I would say that if anyone is interested in bullet journaling, a lot of times you'll see very elaborate examples online on Pinterest or Instagram. And there's nothing particularly wrong with that, but bullet journal can be significantly more simple. The whole point of bullet journaling, and I guess this is what I want to leave you with, is to encourage you to learn about the things that you need, to learn about what it is that matters in your own life. And that starts one day at a time and one step at a time. And I don't think that that's a selfish pursuit. I think that that's something that's really important, because the more we learn about ourselves, the stronger we can become, and the better we can become at serving other people and become more useful. So if you're interested in bullet journaling, I would just start with going to bulletjournal.com and asking yourself, what is it that it can do for you, and begin there.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you now know exactly where to begin and you are ready to dive into the bullet journal method yourself. I think it's a great time to do it right now, since at the time of recording, the year 2019 comes to an end, and then we have the new year 2020. So you can get everything in order, and we all know that clarity leads to power, or even is power. So make sure to find out more. The link is in the show notes. Just click on it and you will find everything on Ryder's website. And again, when you're interested into a new podcast, getting some inspiration from out there, listen to the new podcast, What's Wrong with Us by T-Rex Productions. There will also be a link for this in the show notes. So now I wish you a really magical weekend. Talk to you soon. Until then, create some magic.